Story 1. When I was 15, my friends and I went into the deep web and downloaded some PDFs and videos about Python programming and other things I can't remember. The files were all empty. The next day, my friend, whose computer we were using, said his entire workspace had been deleted. 3 days later, he told us at school that everything on his computer had returned. On his desktop wallpaper, there was a message. "We checked your whole computer. You seem like a nice person, just trying to learn Python. Here is the material. Be more careful when using the dark web." All the missing files were placed on his desktop. Story 2. I was actively stalked by a man on all imaginable social media when I was 18. At one point, I even thought he would show up at my door and harm me. He had random people, including girls, message me to say he was around my area and that I must meet him immediately to avoid trouble. I had to delete all my social media accounts and become a recluse to escape him. Story 3. I used to work online for a social media site. We were popular enough in our prime that we attracted the attention of a hacking collective. They held the site hostage for money. They wanted to be paid a consulting fee of several $1,000s to go away, stop taking the site down, stop disrupting our users, and stop performing hacks to scrape personal information. They insisted that other sites, with IMVU as an example, had paid their fee to be left alone. One of them reached out to me and threatened me by revealing several pieces of my personal information and claiming they had much more, including my bank account information. We couldn't pay them. They did not realize we literally did not have the amount they were asking for. The site was being poorly managed and was on its last legs. I saw the site going under slowly and wanted out. I was under a lot of stress and was being contacted by people I assumed to be dangerous. My boss was pressuring me, so I just walked away. It was the best decision I ever made. Story 4. Back in the day, I had a stalker who would follow me on different social media platforms and create new AOL Instant Messenger accounts whenever I blocked her. We never met in person except briefly. When I was in the marching band, she would be in the stands shouting my name to get my attention. She continued stalking me until I was about 23 years old. Story 5. When my online bank account was hacked, in just seconds, everything was gone. My savings, my peace of mind, all wiped out before I could even react. Story 6. This was America Online Instant Messenger, around 1999 or 2000. I accepted a message request from someone whose screen name I did not recognize. I opened the message, and it read that in 10 seconds my computer was going to get hijacked. About 10 seconds later, the hard disk drive lit up and was making all kinds of noise. I panicked, turned off and unplugged everything. I turned the computer back on later, and everything seemed fine. Story 7. I had inadvertently left my video conferencing room open and minimized after checking some settings. Imagine my alarm when I heard my male coworker say, "Hey, what's up?" when he arrived 5 minutes early for a meeting, and I was pumping breast milk. Not the kind of scary you were talking about, I'm sure, but it sure freaked me out. Thankfully, my camera angle was such that he didn't see anything embarrassing. When he asked, "Is that a three-dimensional printer I hear running?" I said no and changed the subject. Story 8. It was not scary at the time, but looking back, I was 9 years old and really into Animal Jam. A girl and I became friends through the game, but then she found my YouTube channel. She started internet stalking me, as my username was the same in both places. One day, I logged onto Animal Jam, and she was acting sad. She said she was quitting life, then logged out and never logged back on during the few years I continued playing. Story 9. I once received an email from my own email address claiming that someone had my password. The email included the password and stated that the sender had access to all my contacts and social media accounts. It also claimed that they had compiled inappropriate videos of me and threatened to send them to everyone if I contacted the police or anyone else. The sender demanded a payment in Bitcoin to a cryptocurrency wallet address. I panicked at first, but later discovered that it was a scam. Story 10. I used to be an administrator of a Minecraft server. The owner operated a large distributed denial-of-service attack site. It has been shut down by the Federal Bureau of Investigation already. When I left the server and resigned as an administrator, The owner obtained all my personal information and was sending threats to my home. He also launched distributed denial-of-service attacks against me, taking me offline for 3 months straight. I did not believe this was about me until I was recently reminiscing about high school. He threatened to call in a fake bomb threat to my high school. At the same time, our school shut down due to a bomb threat. I have a feeling it was about me, but I never got into trouble or experienced anything further. Nothing has happened since. Story 11. I stole my mom's credit card information to access a webcam website when I was around 13 or 14 years old. I entered a private room with one of the performers and quickly accumulated about $25 in charges. When I finally realized how foolish I had been, I logged out of the website and felt terrible. I returned my mom's credit card and stayed quiet about it until a few weeks later, when she asked me about the charges while reviewing her bill. Fortunately, the website name sounded technical rather than explicit, so I told her I had accidentally purchased something on World of Warcraft. She had allowed me to use her credit card for that, and I did chores to pay for my subscription. I gave her $25 in cash from my birthday money and told her I forgot to mention the charge earlier because she was not home at the time. That webcam performer showed me things I had never seen before. Story 12. I commented on a Cars thread and said something was mid-trim level. The guy reacted angrily, saying I could never afford an $110,000 car and that I should stay in the kitchen where I belonged. A couple of hours later, he escalated the situation by saying I shouldn't talk about cars or things I didn't know about and that I should be watching my 2 children, whom he named. He then sent me a street view of my house. I went to the police, filed a case, and obtained a restraining order against him. Story 13. I was 15. The year was 1997. I met an English guy in an online chat on AOL Instant Messenger who was 19. I lied that I was 16. We chatted for months and definitely had sexual conversations. I was going to England for the summer to stay with family. I told one aunt I was going to visit another and vice versa, then took a train to meet up with him and go to a 3-day festival in a field somewhere. I told no one my plan. I had fun at the festival, went to another with him a few weeks later, and decided I hated him by the end of it. I missed the last train to an aunt's house late one night and had to call a cousin nearby to come pick me up. She told others, and it all came crashing down. I was grounded for the rest of the summer after that. Here's the thing, I had no idea this was scary at the time. I thought it was a great idea. How fun to meet a foreign boy who already loved me. Now I think back on it, and I cannot believe how stupid I was. I also cannot believe how lucky I am that he turned out to be just a slightly dorky 19-year-old boy and not some old, gross, creepy predator. I am so lucky. The worst that happened was smoking some bad weed in a damp field next to an overflowing portable toilet. I tell this story to all my friends with kids because my parents literally had no idea I was talking to guys online or that I was going to do this. They had no way of stopping it from happening, which is terrifying. Story 14. Out of the blue, someone on Steam messaged me, "Hi, insert full real name." He shared a story about how he took his time to link a bunch of random information and match my interests on Steam, Reddit, and other forums to figure out who I was, where I was from, and what I did. This took him weeks, apparently. Why? Just to tell me how easy it was to track someone down. Story 15. I was using Audacity, singing and listening back. While doing this, I heard in text-to-speech, "Nice singing, expletive. I have never unplugged an Ethernet cable so fast." I completely wiped that PC. Story 16. I did this to myself by accident when I was in high school. I made a shower video for my boyfriend at the time, and it showed everything. I tried to send it to him, but the steam and condensation on my phone caused me to misclick, and it sent to my public story. I don't know if you have ever had your phone with you in the shower, but the condensation makes it difficult to click on things without misclicking. I didn't realize it until my mom ran upstairs and yelled at me. I looked at my phone, and it was blowing up. Friends from school, kids from my dance class, and family were texting me, all worried. Random people were saving it and taking screenshots. I obviously deleted it, but that didn't stop the video from going around part of my grade. Now, I'm afraid to bring my phone into the shower or have it anywhere near the shower. I cringe while I shower, thinking about that dumb moment. Story 17. Something more lighthearted. Someone tried to sextort me with garbage data. They used the fake name, fake address, separate username, and separate password I use for online accounts. Even better, they were using a compromised account of some unfortunate person. So not scary. It was kind of funny. Yes, I am Turd Ferguson. You know the difference between you and a mallard with a cold. Story 18. I was playing a game on Xbox and there were a bunch of kids in the lobby being very obnoxious. I said something to my wife on the couch next to me along the lines, "These kids in this lobby are annoying." Suddenly, one of them started listing my full name, home address, work address, license plate number, and said, "You should be nicer if you knew what was good for you." This all happened within about 15 seconds. I just turned off the Xbox after that. My gamer tag was also linked to a burner email with no identifiable information on the tag or email. Story 19. I received the n.jpg link at 2 p.m. and opened it. I had my headphones on at a high volume setting, my browser was full screen, and the room was pitch black. It was the worst jump scare of my life and the only one that physically made me feel sick. For those who are not familiar, it is the Jeff the Killer image flashing rapidly on full screen while playing an extremely loud, constant scream sound effect. It is not too bad if you expect it, but out of nowhere, combined with the sound, it scared me deeply. The link no longer exists, but the picture has become infamous since. Story 20. I clicked the phishing email at work years ago. My heavens, what a nightmare that was. Nothing happened. It was bait. I had to sit through a 60-minute video. Story 21. Someone posted in my state's subreddit about purchasing a gun. The exact details of the post are unclear now because this happened when my first son was really little, so it was at least 2 years ago, and I was also constantly sleep deprived. However, something was off about the post and the person's responses. I called them out, told everyone on the subreddit that I thought the person was up to no good, and contacted the moderators. The moderators confirmed that the person was involved in suspicious interactions elsewhere on Reddit. At this point, the original poster started direct messaging me, becoming increasingly irate and aggressive until I finally blocked them. I did not think much about it until a related story started unfolding, and I had a strange feeling about it. I did some research and now have reason to believe that it was this person who moved to my state to secure guns for her cult. Story 22. My husband's ex-girlfriend managed to use my phone's location services to stalk me when we first started dating. She went to the 3 locations I posted most from: my house, my job as house coordinator for a neurodivergent young man with paranoid schizophrenia, and my mother's house. I get sick to this day thinking about how close she came to finding my client's house. You had to know exactly which hidden road to turn, and what she would have done. His doctors speculated that if he went into catatonia, he would not ever be coming back. She could have literally scared him to death, which would have resulted in him being sent to the state mental hospital. That would have affected us too. That's our boy. I say this because she tried breaking into my mother's house next and got my mother put on a psychiatric hold because she had just taken her Ambien when she heard her. By the time the police showed up, my mother was out of her mind with fear, so they took her to the hospital. I had to beg them to release her to me. Finally, she came back, broke into my car, trashed it, and that was what she needed to move on, I guess. I absolutely do not play with location services. Turn them off. We knew it was her because she left her location services on, and she was still on my husband's phone plan when we met, so we pulled it up and saw she had hit all 3 locations. There is a good chance she is on Reddit, so just in case, it is still on site. Story 23. I am a university professor. I met someone offline and we connected quickly. She seemed a little too eager for the wrong reasons, so I tried to end things. I never gave her any of my personal information. She showed up at my lecture. Story 24. Back in the early 2000s, I was running Microsoft Windows XP and Zone Alarm Security Suite, which was a firewall and traffic monitor. I had an external hard disk drive with everything on it: music, personal information, banking data, home pictures, and videos. It was my catch-all. One day, I noticed my outgoing traffic spike dramatically. I wasn't doing anything to trigger that and panicked. I started investigating but couldn't find which program was causing it. I disabled my Ethernet port, and the traffic instantly stopped. When I plugged it back in, it returned within a minute. Unplugging my external drive stopped it again. I took my computer offline for several hours while I investigated. I discovered a Trojan backdoor virus was dumping all of my data from the E-drive. I don't know how much data was compromised before I interrupted it, but I reformatted and implemented additional safeguards. I am thankful I had Zone Alarm installed. Otherwise, I might never have known. I want to add that I had a reputable antivirus program installed with updated definitions, not McAfee or Norton, as well as Spybit Search and Destroy. I don't know when or how I got infected with the Trojan horse. Story 25. When I was about 20 or 21, I started to come to terms with my sexuality and decided to try a gay dating and hookup website. It was location-based, so all the people I was chatting with were in my home area. I had a few conversations that did not really go anywhere, then got chatting to an older man who said he liked my pictures and flirted with me for a while. Eventually, he asked if I would be interested in meeting up, and I said maybe. He asked what I was into and then said he would like to show me what he wanted to do to me and sent me some images. The pictures were scans of a hand-drawn comic depicting young men being physically and sexually tortured, dismembered, and murdered. I freaked out, logged off, deleted my account, and then spent days not sleeping, thinking about the fact that some man living nearby, who knew what I looked like, wanted to do that to me. Eventually, I told myself that it was unlikely the man seriously thought he would find a willing partner for what was shown in the pictures, and more likely he was just trying to be cruel and freak me out on purpose, but it still disturbed me for a long time. Story 26. When YouTube first came out, my friend and I watched a video of two men involved in a drive-by shooting. We held each other, crying as we watched someone die online. Story 27. Unfiltered internet access as a child led to a grown man I did not know coming to find me. I did not give him my address, but he showed up at the house next door and asked for me by my full name. They did not redirect him to my house, but told my parents the next day, and I got in big trouble. I am glad I got in trouble instead of getting taken. I was around 12 or 13 years old. Story 28. Back when I was about 19 or 20, around 2005, I saw a documentary on cable news network about child trafficking. It was specifically in Romania, following street children caught up in that life. An older man in his 50s came for sex tourism to get a 14-year-old boy. I noticed that whoever he set it up with used Yahoo Messenger. This was in the early Wild West days of chat rooms. I thought it was impossible, so I went on my computer, found what looked like the chat the man was in, and said, "I'm looking for a boy." Literally 50 different windows opened. What do you want? Age? Country of origin? Blonde? Brunettes? It scared me terribly. I completely uninstalled Yahoo Messenger and switched to AOL Instant Messenger. I spent about a month scared to death that the police were going to come to my parents' door because I was curious and looked into something I should have left alone. I never thought it was real or that frighteningly easy to do something like that. I was, and still am, horrified. I feel sorry for every child caught up in this terrible crime. It was over 20 years ago, but it still haunts me. Story 29. Once, I received an email with a photo of a ghost that said if I did not forward it to 3 people, I would die in 24 hours. Story 30. On my neighborhood social media account, I posted a video of a person knocking at my door at 3 a.m. and acting strange. I asked if they had come to anyone else's house and what they might have wanted, because I slept through the whole thing. Then a man who lives down the street and whom I have never met wrote angry, hateful replies to my post. He criticized me with long lectures for not opening my door for the stranger despite being asleep, stirred up a large amount of hate toward me, told others in the replies that he had a gun, and then sent me a direct message with his address and phone number, telling me to come over and meet him in person. I told him never to contact me again and wrote nothing else. Then he found my work email and professional networking account and began sending messages with his number and address, asking me to meet with him. I called my friend over because I was shaking with fear. He definitely knew where I lived based on the video. I thought about contacting the police but ignored him, and he stopped. I immediately deleted my social media account. All I did was post a video asking who the person at my door could have been. I will never do it again. Story 31. Someone sent me an inappropriate picture, and he had a poster on his wall for Halo 5. Everyone knows that is the worst Halo. I was concerned about his lack of intelligence. Story 32. The scariest thing was when I worked in the government and used a system that helps track people down. I worked in tax. They knew more about me than I knew about myself. The girl I made out with back in 10th grade? Yes, she was listed as knowing me. Story 33. Seeing my father, who disappeared years earlier, on Omegle while I was at a sleepover as a teenager. Story 34. Years ago, on a different Reddit account, I posted in a subreddit asking about a copy of a book I wanted to buy. Someone replied to me with my full first and last name and email address with the caption, "This you." I still have no idea how they found that information based on what was on my account or why they did it. The moderators deleted the comment quickly, but it was extremely unnerving. Story 35. I found out after my father died that he had been using photos and information about my life to deceive young lesbian women online in order to obtain naked photos of them. I had to go through his fake Facebook account, which he set up using all my real information, and contact every single friend listed to explain what happened. Then they became angry with me because he had used the information he provided to find my business and show up at my store, upset with me for lying to them. Story 36. I am kind of afraid to say much, but a few years ago I had a profile somewhere, and the profile name could be translated as Lord God. It was a joke profile. I wasn't using it often, but sometimes I received strange messages from some guy. He was obviously not okay. He would say things like, "Today I did this or that," then end with some odd nonsense and so on. I would call him a troll, but I had a rough period and didn't visit the profile for over 8 months. That guy had been sending me messages almost every other day, sometimes 2 to 3 daily. Some of them were oddly deep, quite elaborate and philosophical, and often very, very religious. I felt bad because I was ignoring him, which was quite a religious experience itself. I went through some messages, there were hundreds, and I checked a few, curious about whether this guy was okay mentally. He had a strange liking for his niece. He admitted it, asked for advice, and so on. Keep in mind that message was over 5 months old. He hinted that she was often alone with him, but he never said anything specific. He was somewhat conflicted about it. I checked his profile, he had pictures of a young girl there. Some later messages were quite odd, delusional, I would say. I remember he mentioned demons and such. I took screenshots and reported the profile. Then I panicked and deleted my profile as quickly as possible. Therefore, I do not know whether I received any response. It was very scary later, realizing how many messages and emails linked to the profile I ignored. I kept thinking maybe one of those messages or emails was about something much darker. That still haunts me. Story 37. Wanna cry. I lost all my data. All my self-made music, all photos of activities with friends and family from over 10 years, and all my university materials, including my thesis. I was too naive back then and watched many TV shows online, mostly because I wanted them in English, not the poor German dubs. I used various sites with very little protection for years. One day, one of the ads they showed immediately infected me with WannaCry. It took about 5 to 10 seconds to realize what happened and unplug the computer, but it was too late. I was fairly certain that I had burned some of the data onto CDs at one point, but I was unable to find anything. After I moved, I finally took a weekend to sift through the hundreds of CDs I had collected over the years to clean them out. Most were not even in cases, just stacked loosely in a box. When I had another stack of about 30 CDs in my hands, inspecting them for labels and checking the underside for any writing, I found one completely unlabeled disc that was about 3/4 full. Something told me to try it, and I cried for probably half an hour. It contained almost all my photos and music I had been missing for years. That was honestly one of the happiest days of my life. I found my university materials in that box as well. I now have 2 network-attached storage devices, each with mirrored storage, and the devices mirror each other, as well as a 3rd copy on my personal computer and a USB drive that I should probably update soon. Make backups, people. Story 38. Probably Facebook Marketplace. I was selling a computer on Facebook Marketplace and scheduled a meetup with someone to complete the sale. The meetup happened at 8 p.m. When I arrived at the location, it was behind a truck depot that looked somewhat empty. I got sketchy vibes but thought nothing bad would happen. I stayed in my car and messaged the buyer that I was there to sell the computer. He said, "Okay, give me 5 minutes." I got out of my car and started walking around. I saw a dirty white van, covered in mud. I was facing the front of the van when the engine started, and my instinct told me to leave immediately. I began walking back to my car, but the van followed me. I got into my car and drove off. The van followed me for about 6 or 7 miles before I lost it on the freeway. I checked Facebook Messenger, and the buyer had blocked me or deleted his profile. After that experience, I started carrying a concealed weapon for protection. Story 39. When I was about 15, I was on a children's website and was talking to many people, making online friends for the first time. There was one person with a girl's name who had a lot of inappropriate furry art on their profile and tried to talk to me frequently. I was a bit uncomfortable with them, but I did not want to be mean, so I chatted with them occasionally. Thankfully, since it was a children's website, every conversation was public. Someone reached out to tell me that apparently this person was a predator. They did not offer proof, but I had a strong gut feeling they were telling the truth. So I told the person I knew who they were and asked them to stop talking to me. They basically disappeared from the site after that. It is not that scary now, but at 15, I was really freaked out and did not talk to people I did not already know on that site for a while. Looking back, I realized that person did not talk like a teenage girl at all. I am glad they did not manage to get me off the children's site and start sending me creepy direct messages because that would have been very traumatic. Story 40. I was a victim of sexual exploitation a couple of years ago. I sent a bunch of my nude photos to a group chat on Instagram with all my friends. Someone falsely accused me of sending pictures to a minor. It was the most terrifying few hours of my life. I have not returned to Instagram since. Story 41. I replied to someone who messaged me on a dating application. This application allowed messaging without a match. I responded with a generic friendly reply, and he demanded my contact information. I said I do not give that out for my safety and that I communicate on the application. He became very angry and started sending me screenshots of my social profiles, which were not listed on the application, as well as my home address. Then he messaged me on Facebook saying I was foolish to think I could prevent him from finding what he wanted and tracking me down, followed by a map screenshot of my home. At this point, my sister searched the name he had foolishly provided by messaging on Facebook, and he turned out to be a convicted rapist who had failed to report his new address. I called the police and they were able to track him down and arrest him. All this happened because I made the mistake of responding with hello. It is challenging being a woman. Story 42. I was doxxed on 4chan for posting a picture I took with metadata. It was nothing crazy, just something ghostly looking in the window reflection that I wanted to share on the paranormal board. Someone posted my full name and address. My friend went through and commented on every thread until it disappeared, but I never went back because no thanks. Story 43. I am an administrator of a local social media group. I deleted someone's post and he became extremely angry with me. Because it is a local small rural community group, there was a good chance he knew where I worked and possibly where I lived. He threatened me and my daughter, all because I deleted his social media post. I called the police, and they said they cannot take action unless he actually does something. They said he probably would not, and indeed he did not. I found others who know him, and apparently he threatens people a lot but does nothing. I assume he drinks alcohol. Story 44. Back in 1997, I was on a wrestling board and posted that I was going to an Extreme Championship wrestling show near me. This guy kept replying with a million questions about the venue, the show, the talent, anything. I tried to keep up, and he said something like, "You convinced me to go. I'll bring my kids." I was like, "Good for you," and didn't give it much thought. The day of the event arrived, and I was walking up with my group. The Extreme Championship wrestling crowd isn't exactly family-friendly, and there was a big line to get in for the general admission seats. It was fine, and we were all just happy to be there when I heard a voice calling my name. I looked up, and it was the guy at the front of the line making a come-up motion. Story 45. This was back in 2013 when Omegle was very popular. I was a middle schooler with essentially no friends, going through puberty with very low self-esteem. I was 12. I met a guy online who said he was 15. He convinced me to send pictures of myself. I knew it was a bad idea, but for some reason I ignored that instinct and sent them anyway. He immediately saved the pictures and sent them back to me, demanding more explicit photos, threatening to post them online if I didn't comply. I got scared and said no. He posted the picture and my Kik username online. Within minutes, I received dozens of messages. No one cared that I was a child, and no one helped me take it down. Thankfully, the picture did not show my face. I told him he was terrible, that this was illegal, and that I was deleting my account. He threatened to find me again and ruin my life. 1 month later, I learned about the Amanda Todd case. If you don't know that story, it is heartbreaking and very similar to what happened to me. I spent the next 3 years in constant fear that my life would be ruined over it. I finally told someone what happened when I was 15, but I never reported it to the police because I was too ashamed for my parents to find out. I hope that person was caught. Story 46. A few years ago, I became addicted to sexting on Omegle and ended up exploring some dark topics. One night, a man began our conversation by offering me money to kidnap a teenage girl. I was also a teenage girl, he asked before I could say so, and I decided not to reveal that. Instead, I tried to gather information. He did not seem to have good intentions. He was clearly perverted, not just seeking ransom. He disconnected before I could learn much, but I obtained a name, age, address, and pictures of the girl. I was deeply shaken, but the next day I researched the town, searching local social media pages. Schools in small towns often list students' names online, so I hoped to verify the information. I did not find her name specifically, but after an hour of searching, it was clear her family had long roots there, so it seemed credible. I lacked enough information to act. Reporting to someone who could help or the police meant admitting I had been sexting. I was also afraid the man could track me down if I pursued the matter. Trauma from years earlier contributed to this fear. Eventually, I installed an app to get a burner phone number, called the police late the next night, and begged them to inform her parents. I hope she is safe now. Occasionally, I still search for her name or town and have seen no missing child reports. At least there is that. Story 47. Somebody I had been talking to for a few weeks suddenly stopped responding. I admit I got kind of worried and assumed something bad had happened, so I searched her name online. I was not expecting the first result to be her mugshot. Thankfully, it turned out to be not so scary. She had been caught trying to grow marijuana in her house. Still, when I first saw the mugshot, I was a little scared. Story 48. Back in the 2010s, when a friend who cosplayed and I were trolling Omegle during a sleepover for laughs, someone there almost correctly guessed the city I lived in using some kind of tool. He was technically still wrong, but it was only about a province or two away from my country. I could have gone to that city he guessed by train. At that time, doxing was not as common, and we had not given him any identifying information during the chat. Nor had we posted anything remotely identifying on social media. So it was terrifying. Story 49. I used to go on chat rooms in the early 2000s. I was very young, around 11 or 12, and I used to talk to people a lot. One guy was really odd, and I can't remember what I did, but I upset him. Somehow he hacked my Hotmail account, found out my postcode and address, and kept posting them in the chat room. Nothing else happened, and eventually MSN chat rooms were closed down. Story 50. I had a stalker back on AOL Instant Messenger. He would pop up with harassment, get blocked, create new screen names to bother me, get blocked again, give up for a while, and start over. About a year later, I was playing Final Fantasy XI, a massively multiplayer online game, when someone joined our guild. I didn't pay much attention because I wasn't very focused on leveling. Mostly, I crafted items, but this person always offered to help with leveling. For no reason, I simply didn't like this person, so I stayed away. This continued for about a year until I needed help with a quest, and the person invited themselves to assist. Fine. Things were pretty normal until I noticed a few strange things. They knew too much about me, were overly interested, and kept trying to get me to admit that I didn't hate them. I thought, I don't really know you, so I guess not. Then they revealed the truth. They were my stalker. They spent a lot of time going through my AOL Instant Messenger conversations, finding clues about my screen name, server, and guild. They created a character on that server, leveled it up, joined my guild, and made themselves indispensable to lure me into being in a party with them, hoping I would admit I didn't hate them. Their reasoning was that since they had apologized for their past behavior, I was required to forgive them, because I interacted with them without knowing who they were and didn't immediately hate them. I must accept their apology, forgive their behavior, and be their best friend. I was not pleased. I ended up leaving that guild and eventually the game, especially after the guild took their side because they did apologize and were higher level than I was. Story 51. I was chatting with a woman online and things had been getting pretty risque. One day, I logged in at our usual time and she was already online. We started chatting about various topics, and suddenly she shifted to sexual talk. Seemed really odd. At that moment, I realized that I wasn't chatting with her, but her 15-year-old daughter. I immediately logged off and sent her an email. She was still at work and hadn't had time to inform me. I told her what had happened, which was really nothing, but it could have been very wrong. Story 52. As a 12-year-old, I was talking to someone over 21 who, as an adult, I later realized was a pedophile. I am glad I did not meet up or anything. The internet is scary. Story 53. It was not a situation that ever put me in any danger, but a few years ago, I was watching a streamer on Twitch when he was swatted. He was a cooking streamer just chatting while making tacos. Suddenly, he said he could see many police cars outside and walked off camera with his hands up. The camera stayed on, and we watched officers in tactical gear walk through his kitchen while clearing the house. Thankfully, it ended as well as possible. His wife and children were not home, and no one was trigger-happy enough to shoot his dogs or him. However, it was nerve-wracking to sit there wondering if we would hear gunshots. He told us later that, according to the police, someone had called in reporting a hostage situation at his house. It was literally just him and his dogs, and he was making tacos. Who would swat someone who is just showing people how to make tacos? Story 54. When I was a kid in the early 1990s, I went into a chat room for psychics. A friend and I pretended to be psychic and fooled people. Later, someone messaged me saying they put a curse on me. Story 55. Interacting with a Lizard Squad member in middle school, I was mostly afraid of them damaging my mom's laptop and getting in trouble because of it. Story 56. I was really young, probably 12 or so, and met someone on an online gaming website. Their screen name was something like Soccer Girl, and we had innocent conversations, usually very boring, like, "What are you doing today?" Well, we decided to video chat, and it turned out my friend was actually an older man behaving inappropriately. It scared me so much that I called a child predator hotline. Story 57. In the early 2000s, when I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time in Microsoft Network chat rooms when it was popular. 11-year-old female from Australia, you know how it goes. I would add random people to Microsoft Network, and most conversations were harmless. But there was this one guy who seemed normal at first, but then started getting very creepy. He was strangely interested in gore, had dead bodies as his display pictures, sent disturbing images, and talked in excessive detail about violent things and what he wanted to do. He also sent a few strange photos of himself holding knives that seemed like he took them. Eventually, he started asking for pictures of me too. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a serial killer. Story 58. The scariest thing that ever happened to me online was being groomed by a 22-year-old woman. I was 17. I was way too young to understand what was happening. It started off like a friendship. She was kind to me, gave me attention I wasn't getting elsewhere, and slowly made me feel like I could trust her more than anyone else. But over time, the way she talked to me changed. It became sexual, manipulative, and confusing. She made me feel like I wanted it, like I was mature enough to handle it, like it was love. And I believed her. Story 59. Having a stalking problem. During my Facebook days, someone using an anonymous account was sending me direct messages with photos of everywhere I had been on a given day, both day and night. You name it, they sent me a photo of it. Not even kidding, During that time, I traveled with a flip knife in my pocket because I was that scared for my safety. Police were no help, and the whole thing stopped as quickly as it started. Over 10 years later, we never found out who was behind it. Story 60. When I was 9, my older brother introduced me to Microsoft Network Messenger, and that was my introduction to the internet. Our homepage was Microsoft Network, and on the page there was a link to Microsoft Network chat rooms. I would go there from time to time and just chat about general topics, occasionally receiving a private message asking me my age, sex, and location. One time, I received a message from a man in his late 20s asking me something inappropriate. I informed him that I was 9, and he became even more interested in inappropriate topics and told me he was engaging in explicit behavior. I closed the chat, wrote a message in the chat room about the inappropriate user so others would report him, and logged out. I never returned to those chat rooms. Story 61. Once, I was talking to a stranger on Facebook. I opened up too much to this person, and he started harassing me, demanding that I send him a nude photo or that he would tell my family I was gay. At that time, this was my biggest fear. One day, my mom read the conversation because I fell asleep with my cell phone on in the living room while messages were coming in. She woke me up and we talked. It turned out that the harasser was a neighbor of ours. I came out of the closet, and no one did anything to me. My fear was only in my head. Story 62. When I was a child, I was changing clothes and my webcam light was on. I didn't notice until a window popped up saying, "I see you." It sounds unbelievable, but it happened and was very unsettling. I never leave webcams plugged in anymore or download suspicious files. Story 63. A girl living a state away from where I used to live had been taking photos from my friends and my social media accounts and pretending to be our friend for over 2 years. She photoshopped herself into photos, created fake inside jokes, and talked about memories with us that never happened. I never knew this girl, and neither did my friend. We only found out when one of the girls this person knew in real life contacted me on Instagram and sent me screenshots. Every single account I had and my friend had was blocked by her, even accounts that did not have my name attached. The last I heard, she wished me a happy birthday about 2 years ago using photos taken of me in the place I currently live. Story 64. I remember chatting with a guy, and it never went beyond friends. That is what I thought. We shared common interests and values, or so I believed. I then needed to focus on school, so my time online was limited. He would message me 100 times until I replied. Eventually, I told him that I could not continue and I blocked him. A week later, I was at my mother's school when the secretary told me there was a call for me. It was him. I have never been so scared in my life. The school stopped him from calling there, but I still felt like I was being watched. I changed my phone number 3 times because he found them. It has been 6 months, and I have not heard a word. Never again. Story 65. When I was a child, someone who had been talking to me for months, who I thought was my friend, suddenly became very upset and said a lot of hurtful things. She also sent me pictures where she had cut herself deeply, which really frightened me. Story 66. I was on Omegle one time with a friend just messing around when we came across an elderly naked man wearing a Batman mask, chanting and walking in circles repeatedly. Story 67. I once sent the screenshot to the person I screenshotted, and he saw it before I could delete it. I got my first minor heart attack that day, I tell you. Story 68. I was talking trash to a guy on Xbox 360, Gears of War 2 days. He then said my full home address out loud to me in voice chat, including zip code and everything. I was probably 13. I immediately turned my Xbox off and lived in a state of constant panic for a month afterward. Story 69. I received one of those unusual Pegasus email scams. The scammers knew my address and had a picture of my street. As soon as I saw it, my heart started racing, wondering how they obtained all of that information. After studying the email for 10 minutes, I came to my senses and decided to investigate further. Sure enough, I found a pinned post on a scam awareness forum warning about this scam. It appears that other people have received it as well. Since then, I have received 2 more similar emails and reported them as phishing attempts each time. Story 70. When I was 11, I joined a gaming Discord server with some people who were supposedly 1 to 2 years older than me. There was a kid named Vince who, after knowing me for about 10 minutes and learning my age, sent me a link to adult content. It was kind of funny at the time, but the older I get, the more I realize how inappropriate that was. I told him to leave me alone and blocked him, but that was not enough because we were in the same servers, and he started bullying me apparently. Story 71. I used to be friends with a groomer on Discord. He said a lot of strange things. He unfriended me. He is probably dead since India is invading Pakistan, where he is from. Story 72. Having someone message me after obtaining my number from another person whom I did not know and who knew my personal information. Story 73. When I was younger and played a website called Instant Messaging Virtual Universe, I had trolls tell me they were hacking into my computer. I was a teenager and thought it was true. It was not. They were just troublemakers. Story 74. Dead threats from other kids at school. I was already suicidal, so those aimed at me did not affect me much. However, when they started threatening to torture my pets, it became different. They will never know how lucky they are that my parents, both hunters, do not keep guns and ammunition together. I was also worried that my parents would be disappointed with me. They had already made my life hell, but I was not about to let them touch the only thing in my life that gave me a shred of happiness. Story 75. I broke up with an ex, and he created a fake profile on Instagram to post revenge pornography of me and tried to add my friends. Story 76. Compared to some of the situations here, mine really isn't that bad. My ex stalked me and my new partner online since the day she broke up with me and, as far as I'm aware, still does. She cheated on me, broke up with me, and left for university. I was like, solid, kind of bad, but life is what it is. She never met my girlfriend, as she lives 2 hours away from where my ex and I are from. I found out she had my girlfriend's full address and family information, screenshots from Facebook, all her social media accounts, and many of mine. Anything I posted anywhere was screenshotted. The same happened with my girlfriend. When I first saw it, I didn't sleep well for the following few nights. The best part is, she's still with the guy she cheated on me with. I do wonder how he would react to finding all this out. I'm slowly building a stockpile of evidence. I wouldn't really bother going to the police, but I would be lying if I said causing a bit of trouble by sending it to her boyfriend or her mother doesn't cross my mind every now and then. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.